up, everybody? Joshua Smith here with Queensberry Advisors at Keller Williams Town Center, and today we are here to discuss an important topic. It's more of a process topic. So, what really happens after you go under contract? And I have some notes here, and I picked out a few things to help give you clarity on what you should expect when buying a home right here in Virginia, specifically Hampton Roads. So, once you go under contract, there's an entire process that happens. And the reason you hire a real estate agent advisor is to help you navigate that process. We call it transaction coordination because there's a lot of moving pieces, there's deadlines, there's things you absolutely have to manage to make sure that you get to the closing table ultimately, but also to make sure that you don't land yourself in hot water, right? So we're going to talk about things like the due diligence process, home inspections in particular, appraisals, what happens with underwriting, title work, all the way down to final walkthrough. So we're trying to make this video very simple so you have a high level understanding of what actually happens after you go under contract. A lot of people believe the hard part is getting your offer accepted, but honestly, the real work starts once your offer is actually accepted. The buyer and seller have agreed to the terms of the deal, and the process is moving along. And this can take anywhere from 30 to 45 days, and in some cases, significantly longer. But we're going to take from the standpoint that everything is running smooth. We found the house, we liked the house, we wrote an offer got accepted. So what's next? So the first thing we're going to be dealing with is what we call in our market is the earnest money deposit, or EMD. So what is an earnest money deposit? So the earnest money deposit is a sum of funds that the buyer provides to show their commitment or how serious they are, putting some skin in the game. So how much is this earnest money deposit? This is a question my clients ask me, well, Josh, how much should I put down? Or what's acceptable? What's the rule? So in real estate, and I think any industry, there are some legal rules, there's some hard rules, but there's also these rules we call social norms, right? Where these aren't really rules per se, but they are generally accepted practices or understanding in the marketplace. So when it comes to EMDs, we're kind of dealing with that as well, a social norm. So in this example, we would say if the home is less than 500K, it's socially acceptable for a buyer, a serious buyer, or a buyer who wants to show that they're serious and be competitive in their offer to provide a $1,000 EMD. But it's equally true that a buyer can put $1. A buyer can decide not to put any EMD down, or $500, right? In this example we're talking about here. But it's very important that your agent advises you and give you proper perspective so you can get the outcome that you're hoping for. So in a multiple offer scenario, or you find this house that's perfect to you, but also perfect to three other people, and we all four of you guys submit an offer, and everyone's at $1,000 and you're at $20, you might be unintentionally communicating to this seller that you are either unwilling or unable to fulfill the contract with your low, quote unquote, low earnest money deposit. So things like earnest money deposit, you want to keep in mind in terms of the amount, because that can strengthen or weaken the perspective of your offer. So once the earnest money deposit is submitted, this will go to escrow. Now we won't get into all the details of that, but generally you're going to provide you as a buyer are going to provide this check to the title company, and they're going to put it in an escrow account. Now what happens to that? Do you lose it? No. Does it go to the seller? No. Your earnest money deposit actually sits in the escrow account, and then that will be credited to you as a buyer once you close. Or if the transaction is terminated, then you, the buyer, and the seller will need to sign a release agreement to direct or provide the instructions to where these funds should be dispersed to. So essentially, the earnest money deposit sits in the escrow account unless you close on the transaction. In that case, it will be credited to the buyer. Or if the contract is terminated, a release agreement needs to be signed. If for whatever reason, release agreement or the buyer seller cannot agree on the disbursement of the funds, then you might need to get a court order or some legal opinion on that. But if all going smooth, everyone is fulfilling their duties and terms under the contract, you shouldn't have any issues there. But you still need to know what happens to your money, what it means, why do we put it down, okay? Now, in our market, buyers, we wear timelines, all right? And I'm speaking from the perspective of using the standard purchase agreement. The most common contract used here in Hampton Roads is the range standard purchase agreement. You have 2 business days to provide this earnest money deposit. This is a term in the contract. So make sure you're not late on that, and your agent should be on top of it. We have a saying in the business called being in the deal. And it's my job, my practice of real estate, to make sure that my clients are on top of the timelines. We're managing the timeline so that we're not late or delayed in any of the process there. So timelines matter. 2 business days to have your earnest money deposit, and the contract will outline the different payment methods, what's the amount, and who you're going to hold this money with in escrow. All right, let's go on to the next process. So generally, step 2, buyer's due diligence process. Now, there's a lot of ways a buyer, or there might be a lot of steps a buyer may take to assess a prospective purchase, right? The most common, and 99.9999% of the time, you're always going to want to do this, and that is a home inspection. Buyers always get a home inspection. If you ask me 10 out of 10 times, I'm always going to say yes, all right? Home inspections are could be are single-handedly one of the cost of a home inspection is some of the best money you're going to spend in this process. And why is that? And that's because you're going to hire someone, a home inspector, licensed certified home inspector, to come out to this property and give it an assessment. All right. A home inspection is a risk report. It's not pass or fail. It's to give you as much clarity and insight on what exactly it is you are buying. This is a very expensive purchase, hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? You need to know what you're buying. So a home inspector is going to come out to look for things like deficiencies, safety issues, deferred maintenance, and repairs, okay? And they're going to give you a report, all of these things they called out. And then you can sit down as a buyer with your agent, assess the report. How do you feel about it? Do you want the house in its current condition? Or are there things here that, if addressed, you'll be willing to move forward with the deal? If that's the case, we have an opportunity to negotiate on the basis of the home inspection. So this is a very, very, very important step in the game. And here's the best part. As a buyer, once you go under contract, the pendulum in terms of power dynamics shifts in your favor. Why do I say that? I say that because there's many stages throughout this process once you go under contract where the deal can fall apart, or a buyer can exercise their right to get out of the deal if they're not happy with something. And a home inspection is one. What we do need to know though, home inspections and repairs requested under home inspection are absolutely negotiable, okay? Negotiable. A seller doesn't have to fix anything, but guess what? You as a buyer don't have to buy anything. But if we took all this time to get under contract with the seller, the intentions, good faith intentions, is that we figure out a resolution to anything that may have come up under the home inspection that is a concern for the buyer. So it also offers a negotiation period. So I always tell buyers, home inspections are a necessary tool in your due diligence process, okay? Sometimes they are very clean reports, very little things. Sometimes they're more hefty and you're going to have major issues, things dealing with major systems and appliances of the home. Think about your HVAC, roof, foundation, structural issues. These are major items, right? You definitely want to get addressed in most cases. But you can seek guidance from your home inspector. Also sit down with your agent and talk about your goals, what it is you're looking for, what are your expectations, what are some things you're willing to deal with. And you review the home inspection report, and you come up with a list of repairs, and you submit that onto the seller, and you negotiate. There are a lot of skill-based tasks throughout this process that you want to make sure that your agent is absolutely comfortable negotiating on your behalf, and also giving you proper perspective on what it is you're looking at in this process. So that's the home inspection. Always get one. Don't play around. If you ask me, 99.99999% of the time, always get a home inspection. It is integral. All right, what's the next step? Also, I want to say in home inspections, and look, real estate is a relationship business. It's a people business. You're going to be communicating with many individuals in the process. That means as humans, we're not robots. We have emotions. Okay. So during the home inspection period, emotions can sway. They can go up and down. Okay. You want to make sure, it's my job also to make sure that my buyers understand my buyer's perspective. They may feel nervous in this process. Sellers may get defensive when we get this risk report back and we want to ask for different repairs. Okay, so it's appropriate, or it's important. Excuse me, I should say it's important for sellers to make sure you have an agent who is experienced in navigating these difficult conversations should they come up. Okay, having experienced guidance during this process can make a huge difference in keeping the deal together. All right, let's go on to the next one. So this one deals with excuse me, this one deals with um, buyers who are purchasing their home with the mortgage, and particularly FHA or VA loans, also sometimes conventional. But FHA and VA, for sure, you're going to have an appraisal. So the timeline, home inspections, you're going to negotiate with the seller on the timeline in which you need to get the inspection done and to respond, whether you're going to keep the house as is or if you're going to ask for certain repairs. You need to make sure you stick with that timeline. So if we say, hey, we're going to have our home inspection, then 7 days of ratification, the seller accepting our offer. So ratification is buyer and seller agree to the terms. Then within 7 days, we not only need to have that inspection done, we also need to get the report over along with the request of our repairs over to the seller before the timeline runs out. If we let it run out and you had no intentions on taking it home as is, guess what? You just bought it as is on accident, and that's a big mistake. So once the home inspection period is removed, it's typical in our market for the lender to order the repair within 3 days after the removal of the home inspection process. So what is an appraisal? Okay, appraisal is ordered by the lender. Okay, and its purpose is to determine whether the property purchase price supports, excuse me, whether the property's value supports the purchase price that the buyer and seller have agreed on. What we need to understand is that what a seller is asking for, what a buyer is willing to pay for, and what an appraiser's opinion of value are three completely different things. In a perfect world, everybody aligns. Listing price matches what a buyer is willing to pay for, and it appraises, right? That's a perfect scenario. But we do need to understand these are three different approaches or opinions of value, okay? Appraisals are important because the lender needs to know that, or they need to know that what the buyers is willing to pay for, agreed to pay for, the property supports, and they need to protect themselves before they issue the loan. Don't get it twisted, okay? The lender is also assessing and protecting their capital, right? So you want to make sure that you're not overpaying for a property, and they're only going to lend you up to what the appraisal value is, okay? Now, perfect scenario, appraisal comes back at the agreed upon purchase price or more. We like more for the buyer, right? We really like more because that means you have equity going in, and that's one of the powerful elements of real estate. You can make money when you buy the property, as long as it's priced right. So you make money on the buy. But bare minimums, we want to make sure that the appraisal comes back at equal to the purchase price or better. Now, sometimes this doesn't always happen. Okay, the appraisal value is lower than the purchase price. The buyer is financing the purchase of this home. Okay, this opens up a negotiation period between the buyer and seller, very similar to home inspection in the case that A buyer does not have to move forward with the home if it doesn't appraise, but the seller doesn't necessarily have to lower their purchase price. So open up a period of negotiation between the buyer and seller to see if there can be some adjustment made on the purchase price or some other alternative agreement that is acceptable to both parties, and also the bank. So remember, we want properties to appraise, especially if we're getting a mortgage, right? Because the, the bank is going to control the money based on that appraisal, right? But buyers, also remember, you do not have to purchase a home that is quote unquote overpriced from an appraisal standpoint. So very, very important. Make sure you sit down again with your agent to walk you through this process, because appraisals are one of those things that can silently kill deals as well. And I've done a video on that, just a quick reel if you want to check that out, about appraisals. All right, let's move on to the next one. Getting into the underwriting when it comes to our mortgage. What does that look like? So, as your home inspection is being done, your appraisal has been ordered. There's a process that's been going on in the background that you probably have no idea that's happening. And this is the underwriting process, okay? So at the same time, all these things are going on. You have your lenders underwriting, going through your loan package to make sure you can get the funds you need for the mortgage, okay? This is where the buyers may receive requests for updated documents, things like pay stubs, tax statements. They do monitor your credit to see if there's any spending going on outside the norm or any new debts that may have popped up, okay? So a lot of people believe that once they got their pre-approval, they're completely approved. They don't have to worry about anything else. The process is done. They have their funding, okay? But underwriting is really the lender doing a much deeper verification of your income and your assets and your debts before issuing you the loan, okay? Do not make major financial changes, guys. Do not do it. Do not buy the furniture. Do not go out and buy a new car. Do not give your cousin $10,000, $5,000 to help them out, okay? Everything must stop. 30 to 45 days, we're talking about, people. Keep your spending low. Pay for what you need to as normal. Do not make any major financial changes. Don't open a new credit card, okay? Don't get approved for personal loans or any number of these things. Just chill. Just relax. You'll be free to clear to do that after you achieve your goal of buying your home, okay? Even be careful with large unexplained deposits, all right? Remember, the lender is verifying the information you provided to them of your financial picture and profile. So any major changes to that causes conflict. It can adjust the risk assessment process that this underwriter is doing when they're trying to figure out if this is a good deal or a good person to lend hundreds of thousands of dollars to. Okay, so you also want a strong lender in the transaction that is making sure they stay on top of it, keeping you abreast of what's going on. So the biggest part I would say with the underwriting is don't make any major financial changes and be highly responsive to your agent and your lender for requests to make sure that your deal stays on track. Let's talk about title and settlement. When we say settlement, settlement means we come to the closing table and we are closing. The deal has settled, okay? So with all of this happening, so now we talked about earnest money deposit, home inspection, appraisal, underwriting. You have the title companies also doing their thing, okay? One of the major things a title company is doing during this process is a title search, especially for the buyer, right? So it's very common in Hampton Roads for the buyer to use a separate title company than the seller. So in this process, the buyer's title company's job is to do a title search and find any issues that may prevent the seller to transferring proper ownership and the full rights of ownership of this property to you as a buyer. And if any issues are found, the seller side title company's job is to make sure that those issues are cured or taken care of, and the seller will be responsible for those expenses, okay? So the title companies want to make sure the seller has a legal right to transfer or sell that property to the buyer, and that the buyer is receiving this property without any liens. It could be tax liens, judgments, other people claiming that they own the property. Anything affecting or threatening the proper ownership of the property, the title company want to make sure all those issues are addressed, or that there are none, and you as a buyer can get title insurance. Always get title insurance. You pay for it one time and it stays with you throughout your whole ownership of this property. Get title insurance, okay? One thing your agent should do and always advise you is that your real estate agent is there to guide you, to make sure your risks are minimized, your opportunities are maximized, okay? But your real estate agent is not the title company, they're not the lender, they're not a home inspector, they're not an appraiser, okay? So it's very important that us as fiduciaries, that we guide our clients to the appropriate party for certain questions and guidance on matters, okay? We don't want to guess. We don't want to make assumptions. We always want to stay in our lane to best serve our clients, okay? So we just named a number of different parties that are going to be available in the transaction. Speak to your agent if you have any questions, and they will know exactly who we should go talk to figure out any questions, issues, or inconsistencies in the process that need to be addressed, okay? Also, here's a note too you want to be aware of. So increasingly, wire fraud is becoming a very common and a major issue in real estate. So when it comes to wiring funds, tens of thousands of dollars, sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars, depending on how you're purchasing the home and the your deal flow. You want to make sure that you also verbally confirm with your title company wiring instructions, okay? Call your title company. Don't have your agent do it. They can do it to double verify, but you as a buyer should pick up the phone and directly speak with your title company and ask them for their wiring instructions, so you can make sure that you send the funds to the right party at closing, okay? Or you cut the check to the right people, all right? You don't want to have your money um, you don't want to get scammed out of your money, basically. I mean, a lot of title companies will tell you that up front. Please call our office to verify wiring instructions, just because wire fraud is on the uprise, and real estate is just one of those industries that are vulnerable to these practices, unfortunately. So make sure you check on that. But again, the real estate agent will be with you every step of the way, making sure you have everything you need. And a lot of these things I'm talking about, you're going to hear at your consultation, and you're going to hear throughout the entire process. But I believe the best experience for buyers are when they go through it and they have complete understanding of at least the process. And at the end of it, once you get to the closing table, if you can say, I think I can do this on my own if I want it, I think that's also a win, in addition to you purchasing your home, because that means you have clarity on the process. Not an expert, but you have clarity. You know what to go for. You know where to go for what questions to ask, and you just know the general flow of a transaction. All right, so it's been 30 days. We're about to close, and we got one final thing to do, and that is your final walkthrough. That's opportunity for your agent, you and your agent, to go out to the property and assess the property, and to make sure that the seller is delivering to you a property in substantially the same condition that it was in when you made your offer, including any agreed upon repairs that came from a home inspection or anything maybe the lender required under appraisal. Okay? Your job is to go through the property, flip everything on, check your appliances, check for damages, check for repairs, make sure everything is done and that you're happy with it and nothing has changed. Once you've done that, this is like the easiest part. Sometimes things do happen. You want to have those addressed, but just remember, you do not have to close on the property if this property has changed in any significant way from when you wrote your offer, or it just looks different than what was agreed upon with the seller. Walkthroughs or final walkthroughs are very, very important. I recommend doing those as close to closing as possible, on the same day minimum. I like to do mine within an hour before closing, because that just really shortens the window of time allow for anything to happen. to change in the property, right? There's always crazy stories in real estate. But if you do your final walkthrough a day before closing, and that's the last time you see the property before you actually close, that means there was a whole day in between that you haven't seen the property, right? And anything could have changed. In fact, the seller still owns the property, so they can go to the property if they like. So I like to close that window, get it to an hour before closing, make sure everything is good. And once it's good, head straight to closing. We wrap this thing up. You get your new keys. So final walkthroughs are very exciting. This is like your last opportunity before you sign the paper, hand your check over, and pick up your keys to your new home. But if you're at final walkthrough, that is a major sign that you're on the final stage to a successful transaction and purchase of your home. So get excited about it. Come with a lot of enthusiasm, but be keenly aware. Check your property, okay? Make sure you check it. Have your home inspection report. Have the list of repairs you agreed upon with the seller. Have copies of receipts if there are any work has been done there, and make sure your agent is with you. You guys go around that property, fine tooth comb, and make sure everything is on the up and up for you. So look, that's my time. Just here in under 30 minutes, we talked about what happens after you go under contract, okay? So if you found this helpful, or if you're planning to buy or sell right here in Hampton Roads, Virginia, Chesapeake, Norfolk, Suffolk, or the surrounding areas, please feel free to reach out to me. I would love to be a part of your process, and you'll be in great hands. I'm Joshua Smith, Queensberry Advisors at Keller Williams Town Center. And if you enjoy more straightforward real estate education without all the fluff, all right, make sure you subscribe to the channel, Agent Joshua Smith, and I'll catch y'all on the next one. All right, peace.